Anna Yaroslavna, the Queen of France, was a woman who revolutionized a country. 11th century France, a period of poor education and poverty. Anna Yaroslavna introduced literacy to the people of France, taught them to bathe, and introduced them to the use of a fork with a meal. Anna built monasteries and corresponded with the Pope himself. A newcomer to France, her subjects accepted and adored Anna, and she became renowned as Red Agnes. However, the Queen suffered throughout her life from one single decision. Alongside her were two men, a king and his enemy known as the Devil. One was a lawful husband, the other was the love of her life. Both men competed for the heart of the Queen, but Red Agnes desired the second. Her life began like a fairy tale. Anna's father was Grand Prince of Kiev. There were luxurious chambers and servants, and she was a princess. One of three sisters, Anna became the favorite daughter of her father, Grand Prince Yaroslav the Wise. It seemed that a fabulous life awaited her. However, her fairy tale life burst into flames when she was 20. As Anna's sisters married away, eldest Elizabeth to the King of Norway, and youngest Anastasia becoming Queen of Hungary, middle daughter Anna Yaroslavna awaited a less than fairy tale marriage with an old and tattered man. This was just a part of life in this wild and backward world that was France of the 11th century. But Anna would make the best of this grim situation. During the early 11th century, feudalistic Europe existed much as a large divided pie, with France, Italy, Germany and Britain all waging endless wars to gain and hold on to imperial power. Riots flared, feudal lords opposed peasants. The power of the great Byzantine Empire had weakened. Only within Eastern Europe was there any semblance of unity, war-free and unified with their king. This was the Kievan Rus, with its ruler, Prince Yaroslav the Wise. The entire kingdom of Europe dreamed of their chance to marry into this royal bloodline. Two daughters were already married. Only the middle daughter, Anna, remained with her father in Kiev. The prince searched for Anna, relentlessly, for the best of men and the most powerful of kings. Thousands of miles away from Kiev, a 50-year-old man sat upon the throne, France's King Henry I, with his rule about to expire because of the possibility of being overthrown by angry feudal lords. Among the rebels, the first challenger to the throne was Count Raoul de Valois. Because of his cruel disposition, Valois was better known in his country as the Devil. The entire countryside awaited terrible bloodshed. The reason for the uprising was simple. King Henry had no wife and no children. Therefore, once dead, there would be no further bloodline to take over the throne. Henry I's destiny, therefore, seemed certain. Amazingly, just at the nick of time, the king was saved by a woman. The French call her Red Agnes. At 20, this woman became a guarantee to France's continued state of power. The Pope himself was delighted with Anna's sharp-witted mind. All state affairs were now handed to her. We managed to find a unique picture of this woman. An artist painted it after the death of the Queen. It has been preserved in the Great Chronicles of France. This is the only picture of the woman who glorified France. Born in Kiev and daughter of Kiev Prince Yaroslav the Wise, Anna Yaroslavna became the most famous Queen of France. But how did she manage to save a king and his country? Keep watching. In a few moments, we will learn why the daughter of Yaroslav the Wise changed the fate of a country, yet never fell in love with her husband. Also, how did outsider Anna manage to become mightier than a king? And what scandal could rock the whole of Europe? and turned the adoring eyes of her subjects and even her own children away from the Queen. France, the 11th century. The sanctity of the king is under massive threat. To remain in power, Henry I must marry urgently. And from a wife, he requires one thing: a male heir. However, there is a problem. Finding a wife is not easy. The king is allowed to marry only a princess. Unfortunately, every royal family in Europe is literally intertwined with blood relations. What's more, all the princesses of neighboring countries are actually cousins and aunts of Henry. The daughter of Grand Prince Yaroslav the Wise from Kiev could be his only salvation. Henry was a weak-natured man, so in choosing his future wife, he desired a woman who could actually become his equal. Aware of Anna's education, powerful and dynamic character, Henry felt confident with this match. He learned much about her from his advisors, and he wished to have her for his wife. One question remained. Would Yaroslav give his beloved daughter up to Henry? After all, her beauty and intelligence were legendary. However, it wasn't Anna's beauty that intrigued Henry. Having her hand in marriage meant that Henry could avoid dethronement. Through marriage, he could avoid sin before the church. He would have a healthy heir, and this, he hoped, would provide him the reason to enlist the support of the powerful Kievan Rus. Ambassadors, however, brought disappointing news from Kiev. Prince Yaroslav refused to give him his beloved daughter. In the 11th century, 12,000 people resided in Paris. In Kiev, 50,000. Here's an indicator of what was going on. France was weak, a small and divided country. A duke in Burgundian was far stronger than the king was. This is Iraninska Street, located next to St. Sophia Cathedral. It was here where 10 centuries ago stood the famous palace, the Grand Courtyard of Yaroslav. This is where Anna and her sisters were raised. Their teacher was the monk Hilarion, who gained fame as the Metropolitan of Kiev. Princess Anna and her sisters were educated in arithmetic and history, and also trained in drawing and singing. Astute in medicine, they spoke fluent Greek and Latin. Education was imperative to their father, wishing to raise his daughters not only to make good wives, but as capable future rulers. His foresight was correct. Each of his 3 daughters became a queen. Elizabeth, his eldest, wed the King of Norway. The youngest, Anastasia, married the King of Hungary. And for his favorite, Anna, the Grand Prince made preparations for a special match. He hoped to marry her to Caesar of the powerful Roman Empire, Henry III. Thus, when ambassadors of the King of France approached the prince with their desperate offer, he solemnly refused. However, something unexpected happened. The Italian Caesar abruptly rejected this marriage. In desperation, the King of France abased himself for a second time, sending his matchmakers to Kiev again. This time, he received consent from the Prince of Rus. Anna Yaroslavna would arrive in France and marry its King Henry. What the king did not realize is that it was not he destined to become her true love, but a man whose name the people of his country were afraid to speak out aloud. Anna Yaroslavna herself couldn't have known this fate. She went to France, hoping to find a handsome, courageous knight. She had in mind the opportunity of finding warm greetings and an educated court with poets, musicians, and literary entertainment. This was what she already had at the court of her father. She expected the same. With this vision, the princess traveled 1,300 miles, taking 2 months to travel. The royal procession passed through Krakow, Prague, Regensburg, and crossed the Danube River. The king's bride diligently brushed up on her French and read. Anna brought with her a rich dowry, full of precious stones, carpets, furs, gold coins, and a valuable collection of books from her father's library. She would present the most valuable of them to her fiancé. On it, she would take an oath of allegiance to the people of France's king, and with this book, Anna would begin her adventures in France. Why was this book so special? What surprise did Princess Anna Yaroslavna have in store for her fiancé? Why did her first wish almost provoke a scandal? And what did the young wife never bother to mention to her lawful husband? Find out next. The meeting was set in the old French town of Reims. In the distance, Anna watched as the royal entourage approached. To the front rode a well-dressed horseman. It was then that this woman from Rus cast fate to the wind, stunning the proper-minded French. Tired after this exhausting road trip, she leapt onto her horse like a man and galloped toward her welcoming party, to her detriment. In our time, Henry would easily be considered a man in his prime, but back in the 11th century, the average lifespan was far less. Therefore, 50-year-old Henry was regarded an old man. He was old and infirm. I think when she saw him, she thought, "Oh Lord, who is this scarecrow in the crown?" Old, silent and sullen, the groom watched silently as Anna arrived. Henry dismounted from his horse and kissed her hand. He did not intend to fall in love with this woman, but as he gazed at Anna's beauty, his heart gave in. Before they met, King Henry deemed it important that Anna's father had strong ties to the Byzantine Empire. Anna's sisters were wives to European kings. This was an influential and wealthy lineage. In fact, it's believed that Princess Anna brought along an abundance of gold. This, of course, held importance to the king. What he didn't expect, however, was that this young woman, who had been meant only to save the crown, would mesmerize him with her loveliness. Chronicles report of Anna's unusual contemporary-style behavior: independent, assertive, self-reliant. At her arrival, they describe a king immediately stricken with love. The bride and groom entered the Cathedral of Reims of St. Christ. At the wedding, thousands crowded the streets to catch a glimpse of the foreigner, this unknown woman who would soon become their queen. And upon seeing her, they whispered with adoration, "Beautiful Red Agnes." The wedding ceremony was planned in French tradition. However, there was yet another bombshell. Anna resolutely refused to swear allegiance to France on a standard Latin Bible. Being Orthodox, she would swear only on the Russian gospel she had brought along. This caused a burst of fury and threatened the marriage. Henry desperately needed this marriage, and Anna knew it. Thus, the king made a concession. The new Queen of France was crowned as an Orthodox, as she swore allegiance to France on a Slavic gospel. First of all, this act shows that she was raised with strong faith. Faith. The word speaks for itself. You should be faithful to what you believe in your heart. Be true to your principles. And this reflected in her as it would in any Christian. This would be Yaroslavna's first victory in her foreign country. The book that helped her to assert herself remained part of the cathedral. Later, the French would overlook who had brought it over and begin calling it Reims Gospel. Kings of France would later even take their oath on it. That is, until Peter the Great came to Reims. He convinced the French they had been deceived and informed them that their precious gospel was of Russian origin. At the wedding, Anna swore allegiance to France. But once arriving in Paris, she became horrified by her observations. Yaroslav the Wise received a letter from his daughter shortly afterwards, as Anna complained to her father, "To what a barbarous country have you sent me? Houses are grim, churches are ugly, and customs are horrid." What could have startled Queen Anna this much? Anna was shocked by her husband. During the wedding ceremony, under her signature, the king placed only a simple cross. On her journey to France, clever Anna had carried with her dozens of books to present to her husband. It turned out, however, that he could neither read nor write. And it wasn't just the king. None of the court knew how to either. This highly intellectual woman, raised in Kiev and Rus, was aghast at the sight of a formal French list of chivalrous virtues, which spelled out the expected skills in horsemanship, swimming, sword fighting, spear throwing, hunting, and playing chess. According to this inventory, not a single one of these necessities entailed the knight's ability to read or write. Educated men at this time were found only among the clergy, and in those days in France, it was not typical for any woman to be educated. Anna's second shocking discovery at the court: the French do not wash. There were no baths, simply bowls for people to wash their hands and faces. Water was disliked, even feared, because it was believed to be the source of various diseases. Paris was a small town, seriously dirty, with no sewage system. Sewage in those days was poured directly into the streets, a place not even suitable for wild dogs. We tend to believe Kiev was more sanitary, since the remains of a Kiev water system have been discovered. Perhaps it was not a whole lot more sanitary, but it was cleaner. Coming up next, you will see how Anna revolutionized the court. What did the Pope request of her? And why wasn't the king happy with the appearance of his child? During this period, Rus had baths. People were habitually clean. So Anna's first undertaking at the court, giving the French people Russian-style baths. Then, little, by personal example, she led France into a habit of washing. First the ladies of the court, then their husbands. Since she was fearful of her husband and would generally avoid him, it took a bit more time with him. But eventually, she would convince the king to bathe. As the Gauls within the court became used to bathing, they found it pleasurable to be clean. Anna's next undertaking in the court was considered a revolution caused by a fork. The fact is that in those days, the French ate exclusively with their hands. However, Anna had brought along with her a set of dinnerware. During a meal, Anna shocked the court and was nearly accused of witchcraft for eating with her fork. However, because this was a more convenient way to eat and far more practical for keeping their hands clean, the trend caught on. Within a few years, the French became used to Anna. They forgave her eccentricities and autonomous behaviors, along with her unwomanlike lifestyle. This odd love of horses, hunting, fighting, and books. They began considering her the person that managed everything like a chess game. In time, they respected her more than Henry. But how did she manage to conquer the judgments of these alien people? Queen Anna built temples. She created libraries and opened schools. She fought for people to conform to Christian principles, which helped strengthen her popularity. In a short time, Anna would become co-ruler. Her signature appeared on many state documents. On several orders, Henry even postscripted, "by consent of my wife," or "in the presence of Queen Anna." Why then did they begin consulting with the king's wife on the most important issues? A pragmatic yet busy man, Henry had been made nervous about his queen's strong actions and personality. At the beginning, he had expected little from his marriage, merely hoping to reassure his subjects with the birth of a son, and if necessary, to ask for military support from Yaroslav the Wise. But the unexpected cultural revolution initiated by this new woman to his country stunned him. Similar to the style of her father, Queen Anna came to France as a determined, defiant and domineering young woman. However, beneath it all, she carried great wisdom, so that rather than crying in this strange land, she held her tears and became gentler and more respectful. She began consulting with her council. In reality, along with Henry, the two became united, not by marriage, but by the state matters, which they began to settle together. Queen Anna was respected as a woman who wasn't seeking personal gain or pleasure in her position, but rather as one desiring benefit to her state and region. She took personal responsibility for all state of affairs. Anna was the only woman who could melt the heart of the King of France. Most impressively, she was the only woman in medieval Europe who had ever corresponded with the Pope. From a letter of Pope Nicholas II to Queen Anna. We have heard, in a woman's breast there is masculine strength of valor. You apply your force of severity to the angrily stubborn, and in other good deeds you display a sense of duty and royal dignity. His letter caused a sensation throughout medieval France. However, the Pope wrote to Anna with only one purpose: to remind her that she must give birth to the king's son. In all, there were 4 letters from the Pope, an incredible honor. Anna Yaroslavna became the first woman of France to receive letters directly from the Pope. In the first 3 letters, he would offer hints, praise and teachings. However, his 4th letter would forever undo the life of this queen. It is unknown whether or not it was the Pope's letter that influenced Anna, or she found common ground with Henry on her own. But the newlyweds carried out the prime request of the Pope. In the summer of 1053, Anna announced the birth of the king's first son and saved the monarchy of France. They named the boy Philip. Following this, Anna saved the monarchy twice more. Within 3 years, she had given birth to 2 more sons, 3 brothers, 3 future kings, Philip, Robert, and Hugh. Now King Henry was no longer worried about his lineage. Yet for some reason, the happy father was grim. He tried to avoid noticing whisperings around the court, but he could not. We shouldn't think of the Middle Ages as faithful times, with everyone abiding by the rules. In fact, extramarital affairs were widespread. Although Anna properly performed any duty demanded of her and loyally raised her sons, her heart was not with their father, the king. The young queen was far more attracted to his enemy, an accomplished knight, but a rude and overbearing man. The court called this man the Devil. This villain was the Count Raoul de Valois. She became aware of the vain nobleman on her arrival in France. At her first sight of him, he just stood glaring at her. On their second meeting, he offered a courteous bow. At the third meeting, the queen fell in love. This man was different as day and night from Henry, courageous and purposeful. He reminded her of her father, Yaroslav. What the true identity of this nobleman was, Anna learned much later, and when she did, it frightened her. He was Henry's bitter enemy, a man who, because of his disrespect for the church, was titled Devil. But Anna was now hooked on the man and could do nothing about it. The pair were seen together talking. However, the look on Raoul's face gave away his true feelings. He loved this woman, although she destroyed his dream of deposing the king for the throne himself. A woman's role in those times was to elevate a man and support his every move. Although Valois' character was oppressive, domineering and stubborn, when he was by Anna's side, it was she who transformed this man's personality. He became a gentler, kinder person. Henry discovered the extramarital relationship. He'd lie awake at night. He tried as her partner to keep Anna beside him. He drew her into all his state affairs. However, her attention remained elsewhere. Anna had become a curse for both of these men. As we can judge by his life, Henry was not a chivalrous man, nor was he strict and quick-tempered. The devil was much the opposite. More the man's man, a knight, clad in armor and feathered helmet. Thus it was easy for this young and inexperienced girl to fall in love, despite her intelligence and noble status. This situation created an interweaving of relationships, with Henry watching his wife like a hawk, and Raoul attempting to persuade her away. Anna decided that although in love with Valois, she would nonetheless remain faithful to her husband. Girls of those times were typically taught from birth loyal devotion to their husbands, no matter what. Therefore, Anna, a devoted Christian, chose to remain faithful to her marriage. The love triangle blazed on for 10 long years. Finally, the Pope sent Anna a letter, hinting for her to end this illicit affair with renegade Raoul de Valois. For the second time, Anna obeyed the request of the Pope. She abruptly ended her affair with Raoul, forbidding herself even to think about him. This enraged the Count, and so he married just as revenge to the Queen. In 2 years, however, he would come to regret it. Coming up, why did King Henry suddenly crown his 7-year-old son? Why would the lawful wife of Raoul de Valois leave him? And how did Queen Anna become the first female ruler in the history of France? King Henry went off to war. This was necessary to strengthen his state and release it from its rebel hold. The predicament was Henry's feudal opposition, barons headed by none other than Raoul de Valois. This enemy wanted to dethrone the sitting king and replace him with someone of their own people. Likely, it would be Raoul. The king defended his crown once again. With Henry far away at war, Anna raised her sons and ruled the state on her own. Misfortune befell her, however. Her father in Kiev, Prince Yaroslav, passed away. Anna wished to return home. However, her middle son, Robert, became unexpectedly stricken with illness and suddenly died. As Anna mourned for her father and son, Rus itself became entrenched in war. The throne did not descend to her bloodline. Later, her husband returned from war and ordered a great feast. Without warning, the King of France gave a royal order to crown his eldest son, Philip. The boy was only 7. Why did Henry need such a hasty coronation? What was Henry so afraid of? The fact is, grief-stricken Henry was overcome with terrible forebodings. For weeks he could not sleep. He felt a looming of death. With his wife Anna only 27, who would care for her if he was suddenly absent? What man would ultimately take over his reign? Deducing that this man could very well be his archenemy, her lover, he felt tortured with jealousy. To avoid any possibility, Henry crowned his young son to direct the power back to his own descendants. Henry foresaw his imminent death. In fact, just a year later, tragic news spread across the land. King Henry succumbed to a heart attack, and his last will would surprise everyone. He appointed her Queen Mother, guardian of his son. During this time, it was forbidden by the laws of France for a woman to lead. Only men had absolute right to become guardian and rule the country. And now, as the country waited for Philip to reach adulthood, for the first time in history, the throne was taken over by a woman. This was Henry's farewell gesture to his wife. He gifted her absolute rule over his dominion. The whole country was in her hands. As sovereign, Anna could have changed the course of European history by leveraging her authority to unite France. Her chance to introduce the orthodoxy fully into French culture and make Kievan Rus her ally. However, she did none of this. On the contrary, she temporarily abandoned her power completely. She knew she could potentially lose everything, the throne and her children's rights to the throne. A possible plot or coup could seize all of her power. To protect her children and herself, the Queen resettled in the royal estate of Senlis. There, at her own expense, she began building the Orthodox monastery of St. Vincent. Records reveal that she did this to atone for her sin against her deceased husband and to calm a passion that still lived within. She ruled France remotely, signing agreements and giving orders from within her castle walls. A few years later, something unusual happened. The Queen of France suddenly vanished completely. Coming up, a scandal. Mysterious disappearance of the Queen of France. Who dared to kidnap her? And why didn't Anna object to this kidnapping? What enraged the Pope? And how was the childhood dream of Princess Yaroslavna implemented? One morning, Anna rose and, as usual, kissed her children before mounting her horse, riding off to go hunting. But as evening drew, there was no sign of the Queen. She didn't return home. In fact, nothing was heard from the Queen for several months. What was discovered was that Raoul in fact kidnapped Queen Anna while she was hunting. Ironically, it was more of an agreement than a kidnapping, since there was no sign of a fight. She was carried off to his castle Crepy. As months passed, a scandal broke out throughout Europe. The masses came to learn that the king's widow had abandoned her children only to shamelessly live with an already married man. Her chosen one was Raoul de Valois, the anarchist and sworn enemy of the late king. The Pope was enraged and wrote not to Anna, but to Raoul. In his letter, the Pope called the Count a devil tempter, then excommunicated him, demanding he return the Queen to her rightful place. Raoul de Valois disregarded the Pope's command, only to marry the Queen. In this act of defiance, he had dishonored his previous wife, and for such disregard of religious sacrament, was completely denounced by the Church. The Pope's letter received nothing more than laughter from Raoul. After waiting for his queen for more than 10 years, he was by no means going to give her up. Despite the Church's directive to return her to her palace, Anna remained at Raoul's castle for several more years. During this time, she completed her monastery of St. Vincent and, as is evidenced by her signature on state documents, aided her son Philip from afar and helped rule the country. However, the Queen's reputation was to become marred forever. In the past, Anna had always been judged and then justified. Even her children forgave her for her eccentricities, but times have changed. Let us compare this situation to our present time. We see a young girl that was an A pupil, well brought up, intelligent and kind, who fell in love with a reckless bully. And when this bully acts badly, she tends to defend him by saying, "He is good. You don't realize it, but I see it." Perhaps this situation between Anna and de Valois reflected these kinds of thoughts, because due to the circumstances, she felt that this man was her destiny, and so she tried to elevate him, and she managed to convince herself that it was okay. Anna never had children by the Count. However, in France, there were rumors that it was Raoul who was the real father of her sons, that the pair were lovers from the start. Anna paid no attention to such rumors. Instead, she traveled everywhere with her young son King, accompanied by her unlawful husband. Who in fact really fathered her children? This mystery the Queen took with her to her grave forever. Coming up, what punishment awaited Anna for her sin? the tragic ending of Red Agnes's life. Also, how Yaroslavna, 1,000 years after her death, saved the St. Sophia Cathedral. Finally, what connects this woman with Joan of Arc and Charles Darwin? In a few minutes, we will discover for the very first time the unknown mysteries of the Queen of France. The 20-year-old daughter of Yaroslav the Wise, Anna, was married to King Henry I. All of Europe admired her beauty and intelligence. Then Anna gave birth to the king's long-awaited heir, Philip. But after her husband's death, she shocked France by marrying his sworn enemy, Count Raoul de Valois. This marriage was judged even by the Queen's children. Despite the Pope's excommunication of the Count, the lovers continued to live together. However, it was tragedy that ultimately separated them. Their life continued together for 10 years. Anna became happy for the first time. One day, however, after returning from her son Philip's castle, she returned home to find Raoul dead. He had died, just like King Henry, from a heart attack. As she stared into the blank eyes of her lover, Anna began to accuse herself for his death. First her husband, now her beloved. Could it have been she who had brought such misfortune? After Raoul's death, Anna was certain she had lost the meaning of life. From the castle of the Count de Valois, Anna returned to her son Philip, but no one expected her there. By that time, the eldest son officially had become king and had chosen his queen. Therefore, he no longer required his mother's advice. Old, lonely, and now abandoned Queen Mother faded silently into the annals of history, no longer placing her signature onto documents, and no longer consulted or asked for her support. Subjects ceased to recall their Red Agnes, and so after 25 years, France once again became a stranger to her. Although she lost interest of state affairs and much of everything, and due to her strength of character, life went on for Anna. And so Anna continued to contribute by helping her children and her king. While living at her estate in Senlis, although she no longer went for her favorite rides, she continued to visit her monastery on a regular basis. The former queen's final wish, one more visit before her death to her native Kiev. The last known surviving signature of Anna dated back to 1075. After that, France's most curious queen disappeared. Was this disappearance caused by discomfort in losing her power or by illness? She simply vanished. Nobody knows where she lived in those last few years, and we'll never know. Coming next, where did Anna Yaroslavna die, and how did she manage to save the favorite church of her father, St. Sophia Cathedral? What connected the Queen with Joan of Arc? And what did English scientist Charles Darwin have to do with Queen Anna? Nothing is known for sure of the last period of the life and burial place of Anna. Among the possible places of her burial are Kiev, Paris, Reims, and Senlis. Only one thing is known for sure. After her death, Queen Anna created one more miracle. She helped save the favorite church of her father, St. Sophia Cathedral. During the 1930s, at the site of St. Sophia's Cathedral in Kiev, Stalin ordered architects to build a government square with plans to demolish this cathedral. With all historian objections ignored, the future of the ancient shrine of Kievan Rus stood under threat. A few years before the planned demolition of the cathedral, the French themselves intervened for its salvation. At the same time, they were already in the process of destroying St. Michael's Cathedral. At this time, all outstanding sites were being destroyed. Our consulate turned to the Soviet government and begged them not to demolish our beloved cathedral, built by the father of our Queen Anna. Thankfully, the communists agreed to leave the shrine unharmed. Otherwise, they would have likely spoiled the tender diplomatic relations with France. A millennium after her death, Anna seems to have helped Kiev, and though no one knows the whereabouts of her grave, the Queen has not truly disappeared. In the middle of the 20th century, English anthropologist Francis Galton made an interesting discovery. He unearthed the ancestry of his uncle and creator of the evolution theory, Charles Darwin. The eminent British scientist was in fact descended from Queen Anna Yaroslavna. He is the grand-grand-grand-grand-grandson, the 5th generation grandson of her youngest son Hugh. Kiev art critic Natalia Krutenko has explored the genealogy of the Queen of France and created the branches of her family tree. As it turns out, descendants of Anna Yaroslavna led to 11 kings of the Capitan dynasty, 13 of the Valois dynasty, and 7 of the Bourbon dynasty. Her final descendant of one of these branches is King Louis-Philippe of Orléans. He would rule the country until the French Revolution. Another of Anna Yaroslavna's descendants is Charles VII, who was ultimately saved by the actions of Joan of Arc from an imminent death, as she led her king's army into war with England. And for her king, Joan of Arc burned. In the end, Queen Anna managed to change the history of a whole country. She and her children have made France a powerful, developed country, and the French remember this. But in her life, Anna had to choose between power and love. And this woman's heart chose love. Her happiness lasted for only a brief moment. But this moment was worth it.